And most of them, I mean the overwhelming majority, will arrive at the end of those 40 years with almost nothing to show for it. Not because they didn't earn enough, not because life was unfair to them, but because at every single decade of their lives they made the same predictable, avoidable, absolutely preventable mistakes with money. I've watched it happen for over 70 years in business and investing. I've seen brilliant engineers go broke. I've seen doctors retire with nothing, and I have seen ordinary, plain, modestly paid people retire wealthy. Not because they were lucky, but because they understood a handful of things that most people refuse to learn. I'm going to tell you exactly what those things are today, organized not by theory, but by the decade of life when each mistake tends to destroy you. Your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s. Pay close attention to the decade you're in right now, but don't you dare tune out for the others. Because the mistakes in your 60s, they were almost always set up by a bad decision made in your 30s. Let's begin. The 20s. People treat this decade like it's a dress rehearsal, a warm-up, a time to find yourself, spend freely, figure things out. It is not a warm-up. It is the most financially important decade of your life, and most people completely waste it. Here is a number I want burned into your brain, $335,000. That is the difference between a 25-year-old who starts investing $200 a month and a 35-year-old who does the exact same thing, same $200, same 8% return. But the 25-year-old ends up with $622,000, and the 35-year-old ends up with $287,000, because they simply waited one decade to begin. Here's what's remarkable about that number. The person who waited only invested $24,000 less in actual dollars, but they ended up with $335,000 less in wealth. That's not arithmetic, that's compounding. And compounding is, as I've said many times, the eighth wonder of the world. The cruelty of compounding is that it rewards patience and absolutely punishes delay. Those first 10 years represent more than half of the final value of the account. Not because you put more money in, but because that money had the longest runway to grow. You cannot get those years back. Not with a higher salary, not with better stock picks, not with anything. I don't care if you're only investing $50 a month right now. The habit and the time horizon matter more than the amount. Start. I recently heard about a 29-year-old woman with zero credit score. Zero. She'd used a debit card her entire adult life, and now she can't rent an apartment, can't qualify for a reasonable car loan. Her responsible aversion to debt has ironically made her life harder. Here's the thing about credit that most people misunderstand. Your credit score is not a measure of how much you spend. It is a measure of how reliably you pay back what you borrow. That's it. So the solution is elegantly simple. Get a starter credit card, put a small recurring charge on it, automate the payment in full every single month, and within 12 to 18 months, you'll have built a solid credit history. You never need to carry a balance. You never need to pay interest. You just need to demonstrate to the system that you are a reliable person. Do it early. It costs you nothing, and it opens doors for decades. The average monthly payment on a new car in America is now $748 per month. Let that sink in for a moment. That is merely $9,000 a year. Money that could be compounding in an index fund, handed to a depreciation machine. A new car loses 15 to 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. You are paying a premium to be the person who absorbs that first brutal drop in value so that someone else can buy it from you a few years later at a sensible price. If you need a guideline, use this. Put at least 20% down, finance it for no more than 4 to 5 years, and ensure your monthly payments don't exceed 10% of your gross monthly income. If you can't meet those thresholds, you're buying too much car. Simple as that. There's no pride in paying $1,600 a month in rent when you have no savings, no emergency fund, and no investments. There is only the appearance of independence while you quietly fall behind. If you have the option of staying home a year or two longer, and I understand not everyone does, take it seriously. The median rent in the United States is now over $1,600 a month. If you stayed home for just 2 extra years, that's nearly $40,000 you could redirect toward a down payment, an emergency fund, or compounding investments. Financial independence doesn't come from getting your own apartment at 22. It comes from building a real financial foundation and then leaving. 69% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That is not primarily an income problem. That is a tracking problem. Most people have no idea where their money goes, and so it simply goes. A budget is not a punishment. It is a map, and you would not drive across an unfamiliar country without a map. A budget simply tells your money where to go before it decides on its own, usually somewhere stupid. 84% of people who budget say it helped them get out of or stay out of debt. That is not a coincidence. That is cause and effect. Track your money, category by category, every month. It takes 20 minutes and it changes everything. In your 30s, the mistakes shift. They become less about ignorance and more about ego, about lifestyle, about what you want others to think of you. The average millennial spends $38,000 on a wedding. $38,000 for one day. Now, I'm not a cynic about marriage. Marriage, done well, is one of the best decisions a person can make. For happiness, for stability, for building wealth together. But a wedding is not a marriage. A wedding is a party. And spending $38,000 on a party while carrying debt without a proper emergency fund, without adequate retirement savings, is a display of social performance at the direct expense of your actual financial future. A reasonable guideline: spend no more than 20% of your combined annual household income on a wedding. If you and your partner earn $150,000 together, that means $30,000 or less. Think hard about your guest list, because every additional guest adds catering, seating, invitations, and complications. Decide what genuinely matters to you both and spend on that. Cut everything else without apology. By your 30s, you should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses sitting in a liquid, boring, low-yield savings account. Not invested, not locked up. Available. I know people think an emergency fund is dead money. It isn't. It's insurance against catastrophe. It is a thing that prevents you from raiding your retirement account when your car engine blows up or your company downsizes. Without it, one bad event wipes out years of progress. With it, one bad event is just an inconvenience. A home is not just a mortgage payment. That's the most dangerous misconception in personal finance. According to a bank rate study, the average annual cost of owning and maintaining a single-family home in the United States is now more than $21,000 per year. And that's on top of your mortgage, property taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintenance, repairs, appliance replacements, HOA fees, landscaping. Every one of these costs is real, recurring, and frequently underestimated. Before you commit to one of the largest purchases of your life, calculate the full ownership cost, not just whether you can afford the monthly payment. A house that stretches you financially doesn't give you the gift of homeownership. It gives you the burden of it. Your 30s are your prime earning years. This is the decade you should be aggressively building net worth, not steadily adding liabilities. Life in your 30s gets complicated fast. Career pressures intensify. Children arrive. Parents start needing support. Temptation to borrow for home renovations, for a better car, for a vacation, for convenience is everywhere. And the danger is not any single debt. The danger is the slow accumulation of multiple debts that together create a permanent drag on your wealth building. High interest debt, particularly credit card debt, is not just expensive. It is mathematically destructive. While your investments might grow at 8% annually, credit card interest can run at 20, 22, 24%. You cannot outrun that. You must eliminate it. Every time your income goes up, your standard of living should not automatically follow. But it almost always does, and that's the trap. You get a raise, you upgrade the car, You move to a bigger house. You eat at nicer restaurants. You take more expensive vacations. And somehow, despite earning significantly more than you did at 25, you're still barely saving. Here's a thinking tool I find useful when you're considering an expensive upgrade. Don't think about the monthly cost. Think about the 10-year cost. That nicer car that costs $400 more per month is not $400. Over 10 years, it is $48,000 before you account for what that money could have compounded into. When you view expenses through a 10-year lens, most upgrades stop looking appealing very quickly. In your 40s, reality arrives. You can no longer tell yourself that retirement is something you'll worry about later. Later is now. Fidelity suggests that by age 40, you should have 3 times your annual salary saved for retirement. By 50, 6 times. If you earn $100,000, that means $300,000 saved by 40 and $600,000 by 50. Most people in their 40s are nowhere near those numbers and they know it. The mistake many then make is panicking and doing nothing, or worse, panicking and making reckless bets to try to catch up. Don't do either. Here's the correct frame. You still have 20 or more years until retirement. That is meaningful time for compounding to work. The solution is not shortcuts. It is immediate, sustained, disciplined contributions to broad-based index funds. Maximize your 401k contributions. Maximize your IRA. Do not miss your employer match that is a 50 to 100% return on your money before a single investment is made. There is nothing in the market that offers that. If you have dependents, if you have assets, and if you do not have a will, a living will, and a health care power of attorney, you are gambling with your family's future. An estate plan is not morbid. It is responsible. It is the document that tells the world what you want to happen if you cannot speak for yourself. And it prevents the people you love from fighting over your affairs in the most stressful moments of their lives. Many of these documents can now be completed online in an afternoon. There is no good excuse for not having them. In your 40s, insurance is not optional. It is infrastructure. 2 types matter most. And first, life insurance. The standard guidance is coverage equal to 10 to 15 times your annual income. If you earn $100,000, that means $1 to $1.5 million in coverage. Term life insurance, not whole life, not universal life. Term life is straightforward, affordable if you're healthy, and delivers exactly what it promises. Whole life insurance, by contrast, is a product that seems to exist primarily to generate commissions for the people selling it. Avoid it. Second, disability insurance. This is the coverage most people completely ignore, and it covers the most likely risk you actually face. Your odds of being disabled during your working life are far higher than your odds of dying during it. Disability insurance replaces roughly 60 to 70% of your income if you cannot work due to illness or injury. Check whether your employer provides it. If they don't, get your own policy. The average American debt peaks between ages 40 and 49, and the total across mortgages, auto loans, student loans, and credit cards exceeds $105,000. The 40s are often when people start earning more than they ever have, and also when they start spending more than they should. The children are older. Some big expenses are behind you. You feel like you've earned the right to enjoy your money, and to a point you have. Enjoying the fruits of your labor is part of the purpose of earning, but there is a meaningful difference between intentional enjoyment and careless consumption. One is reward, the other is erosion. I see this constantly. A person arrives in their 40s, realizes they're behind on retirement savings, and instead of making steady, boring, systematic corrections, they start chasing hot stocks, speculative real estate deals, cryptocurrency schemes, option strategies they barely understand. I want to be direct with you. That approach does not fix the problem. It accelerates it. The boring path, consistent contributions to diversified index funds over time, is not just safer. It is statistically superior to almost every active strategy most individuals try to execute. Poor Charlie Munger has said it many times: invert, always invert. Ask not how to get rich quickly. Ask how people reliably destroy wealth, and then don't do those things. The list includes excessive trading, undiversified concentration in speculative assets, leverage, and the arrogant belief that you can reliably outsmart a market populated by professionals with far more information and resources than you. Don't gamble your retirement. The boring path is the right path. The 50s are the last decade of serious wealth building for most people. How you handle this decade will define whether your retirement is comfortable or anxious. People in their 50s sometimes look at their retirement balances, and for the first time in their lives, it's a genuinely large number. And they think, I've earned the right to use some of this for a vacation, a renovation, a second property. Here is what they are actually doing if you withdraw $10,000 from a traditional retirement account before age 59 and a half, and you're in the 22% tax bracket. You will owe 22% in income tax plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty. That is $3,200 gone immediately, a 32% haircut on money that took years to accumulate. Not worth it. Leave it alone. Conventional wisdom says become more conservative in your 50s, and there is truth in that. But there is a crucial distinction between gradually reducing risk and eliminating growth entirely. If you're 52 years old and you move everything into bonds and fixed income, you still have potentially 15 years until retirement, and then another 20 to 30 years of retirement after that. You need growth. A portfolio with zero equity exposure during a decade of potential market appreciation will likely fail to keep pace with inflation, let alone generate the returns you need. Maintain meaningful equity exposure. Reduce it gradually. Do not eliminate it. Your 50s should be the decade you achieve complete, permanent freedom from high-interest debt. Credit cards, auto loans, personal loans. Every dollar you're spending on interest in your 50s is a dollar that is not compounding toward retirement. And more importantly, every dollar of debt you carry into your 60s is a monthly obligation that will follow you into a fixed income. Now, I'm not suggesting you necessarily rush to pay off a 3% mortgage. That math may not favor you. But if you have debts with interest rates above 6 or 7%, attack them ruthlessly. In your 50s, this is not optional. Entering your 60s debt-free, or as close to it as possible, is not a luxury. It is a prerequisite for a comfortable retirement. Once you turn 50, the IRS allows you to contribute more to your retirement accounts than younger workers. The catch-up contribution limit for 401k plans is several $1,000s above the standard limit. Same for IRAs. If you have the financial capacity to max out these contributions, do it without hesitation. Every additional dollar contributed now benefits from tax-deferred compounding for potentially 15 or more years. This is one of the few genuinely advantageous rules the system gives you. Use it. And now we arrive at the 60s. The decade I said was most important, and I meant it. Because every mistake you make here is magnified. You have less time to recover. The consequences are lived, not abstract. You spent 40 years in accumulation mode, saving, investing, growing. Now you must shift into distribution mode, and most people have no idea how to do it. Without a deliberate withdrawal strategy, you are likely to make one of two errors: withdrawing too aggressively and running out of money in your late 70s or 80s, or withdrawing too conservatively and living far below your means while your account grows unnecessarily. The 4% rule, which states that you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio balance annually, adjusted for inflation, with very low historical probability of running out of money, is a reasonable starting framework. Under this rule, a $1 million portfolio supports roughly $40,000 per year in withdrawals. A $2 million portfolio supports $80,000. Use this rule to calculate your retirement number, then build your withdrawal strategy around it. Account for the sequence of returns risk. The danger that a major market decline in your early retirement years can permanently impair your portfolio. Account for healthcare cost inflation, which historically runs faster than general inflation. Have a plan written down before you retire. This is the counterintuitive mistake, and it is more common than you might think. Published research by David Blanchett and Michael Fink found that retirees are withdrawing just 2.1% of their savings annually, less than half the 4% rule suggests is sustainable. The result? Retirees who spent 40 years building wealth are now dying with large sums still in their accounts, having skipped the trips, the experiences, the generosity, the quality of life they could have afforded. This is a real tragedy. If you build a solid financial base, have done the math carefully, and your withdrawals are sustainable, you must give yourself permission to spend. The goal was never to die with the largest possible account balance. The goal was to fund a life worth living. Don't let irrational fear of running out of money prevent you from actually using the money you spent your life accumulating. You are eligible for Social Security at 62, but at 62 you receive only 70% of your full benefit. If you wait until 67, the full retirement age for most people today, you receive 100%. If you wait until 70, you receive roughly 124%. Think about what that means over long retirement. If your full benefit at 67 is $2,000 per month, claiming at 62 gives you $1,400. That's $600 per month less, $7,200 per year, for potentially the rest of your life. The break-even point for delaying to 67 is typically around age 78 or 79. If you live past 80, and statistically many people do, delaying pays off substantially. Now, there are circumstances where claiming early makes sense. Poor health, immediate financial need, specific household strategies. I'm not suggesting it's always wrong, but claiming early simply because you can, or because you feel entitled to the money you've been paying into the system for decades, that is an emotional decision masquerading as financial strategy. If you can wait, wait. This one surprises people when I raise it in financial discussions, but it matters enormously. A study of 1,200 older adults found that successful retirement involved not just financial planning, but what researchers called fulfillment planning, having a clear sense of purpose, community, and meaning in retirement. Those with a vision for their post-work lives reported better mental health, higher self-esteem, and richer social engagement. I have watched highly successful people retire and become miserable within a year. Not because they ran out of money, but because they ran out of purpose. Work, for all its frustrations, provides structure, identity, and contribution. Remove it overnight with no replacement, and you remove a central pillar of your psychological life. Before you retire, answer these questions honestly. What will I do with my time? Who will I spend it with? What will I contribute to? What will I learn? What community will I be part of? These are not soft questions. They are the questions that determine whether retirement is a liberation or a slow decline. Answer them before the day arrives. Medicare eligibility begins at 65. But Medicare does not cover everything: dental, vision, hearing, long-term care. Significant, expensive, highly likely costs that Medicare leaves entirely in your hands. According to Fidelity, the average retired couple needs approximately $315,000 saved specifically to cover health care and medical expenses throughout retirement. And that figure already accounts for Medicare coverage. $315,000 just for health care, on top of everything else. If you retire before 65, you'll need bridge coverage, private insurance to fill the gap until Medicare begins. This can cost thousands of dollars per month depending on your health and the plan you choose. It must be factored into your retirement budget. Long-term care, nursing home care, assisted living, in-home care is perhaps the most financially devastating risk in retirement that most people do nothing about. A single year in a nursing facility can cost $80,000 to $100,000 or more. Investigate long-term care insurance well before you need it. Premiums are dramatically lower if you buy in your 50s rather than your 60s. This is not a cost to defer. We have covered 25 mistakes across 50 years of adult life. Let me give you the thread that connects all of them. Almost every financial mistake I described tonight is a variation of one of three errors. First, impatience, wanting comfort, status, or pleasure before you have earned the financial stability to support it. Second, inattention, not tracking, not planning, not asking the hard questions until it's too late. And third, social performance, spending to appear successful rather than to become it. The antidotes are not complicated. Start early, spend less than you earn, invest the difference in simple, diversified instruments. Eliminate high interest debt with urgency. Protect yourself with appropriate insurance. And have a plan, not just for your money, but for your life. None of this requires genius. It requires consistency. It requires patience with a process that rewards patience. And it requires the discipline to ignore the noise, the hot tips, the can't miss deals, the financial products that seem designed more to enrich the person selling them than the person buying them. As I've said before, it's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid. The good news is that the right decisions, the boring, reliable, systematic ones, are available to virtually everyone watching this. You don't need a high income. You don't need a financial advisor. You don't need sophisticated strategies. You need to start, and you need to continue. Which decade are you in right now? And more importantly, which of these mistakes are you still making? Think about it carefully, because the time to fix it is now, not in the next decade. If you want to go deeper on the 4% rule and calculate exactly how much you need to retire comfortably, watch the video linked on screen right now. It walks through the math step by step. See you there.